Hello, welcome to the town of Kinsmith. In my time in this town, I've come to find the residents are mostly tame, but in the surrounding woods is another matter. Supernatural or not, these lurkers aren't something you want to run into on your morning hike. Number 1. Throughout the days, we take our 2 dogs outside to their kennels so they can get out of the house for a while and run and play and such. These are not small dogs. One is a lab husky mix, and the other one is a full-blooded Staffordshire Terrier pit bull. The kennels are placed at the edge of the yard near the woods. These woods are big, large enough that it takes a day to go hiking through them. Lately, when it gets dark, the dogs seem to be on edge. They'll bark and whine towards the house to get in. At first, I figured they just wanted to get back into the house, but now I'm thinking they're actually scared. 3 nights ago, when I went to go get them, it was already dark, but we have a security light, so it isn't pitch black or anything. I got to the front of the first kennel, and both dogs were being quiet. They always bark at me excitedly when I go to get them, but they were dead silent this time. This weirded me out a little, but not to the point of being scared. I will admit there's a certain uneasiness in the air, though, something I can't explain, but it sort of felt electric, like I was about to be shocked. The longer I was there, the more uneasy I felt. I started getting the first dog, the lab, out, and heard a heavy snap in the woods near the kennels. I froze, the dogs froze. By this time I was so on edge that if someone had spoken, I would have jumped, screamed, and possibly ran. The creepy feeling in the air just kept getting thicker. The lab had her bushy tail stuffed under her and it was whining. That didn't make me feel any better. The pit bull was as far away from the woods as she could get, whimpering for me to come get her. You can only take 1 dog in at a time because they get too excited and will sometimes try to fight, so I avoid that at all costs. I felt so bad for leaving the pity there by herself, but I had to do it. As I walked away, she barked this high-pitched, whining type of bark at me that I never heard her do before. The lab couldn't get to the house quick enough. I went back for the other one and dreaded every step as her door was right at the base of the woods. I would have to turn my back to the woods to open her door and get her out. The air felt heavy and stale with an unpleasant smell like a dead skunk. As I approached her kennel, another snap and I was about ready to run for it, but I didn't want to leave my dog, who had her head down defensively facing the woods. I could barely make it. To be honest, it felt like trying to walk through water. I was terrified by the time I reached the door. I heard heavy breathing behind me as I got my dog out. She was scared too, and started growling behind me. I was frozen in place. The breathing continued for a minute before I heard steps started coming towards us. We both took off at the same time. A terrifying scream came out at the base of the woods. I didn't dare look back. I just ran. My pit bull pulled me all the way back to the house. I got in, flipped off all the lights, and stared out the window at the woods. I could see something moving slightly, but just out of the light. It moved back and forth for about 5 minutes, then disappeared. It took me forever to fall asleep that night because I was so scared that every little noise freaked me out. The next night I went to get the dogs earlier, right around dusk. I thought all was good until I was getting my pit bull out. A huge snapping sound like a tree branch had just been snapped in half rang out. It sounded pretty far away, so I just hurriedly got my dog and started towards the house. A few steps away from the kennel I heard something big start charging me from inside the woods. We ran again and it appeared to follow for so long, then retreated back. Now, every night since, I hear sounds coming out of the woods like branches breaking and being thrown around. Knocking on trees, roaring. I am absolutely terrified. I no longer even take my dogs down. I just take them for walks during the day and make sure we are all in before dusk. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about buying a gun, but I'm not sure it'll help. Number 2. I live right next to a Navajo reservation and have made friends with many of the people there my age. We like to hang out, play video games, and just be normal teens. I walk over a lot since my best friend lives a little less than a mile away from me. This isn't a long trek and only takes me about 25 to 30 minutes. I've made this trip dozens of times and have grown very comfortable with it. I know the people along the way, so I'm not scared or on edge. There's a patch of forest, however, about midway there. It's a little unnerving sometimes. There's always that feeling of being watched. It's a regular occurrence for me, so I try to just ignore it and shake it off as my mind is playing tricks on me. This day, I spent more time at my friend's house than I meant to, and I'd left when it was already getting dark. I reached the stretch of forest right as the sun disappeared from the sky. I shivered a little as I readied myself to begin the journey through. I was 10 steps in when I heard a branch snap. You know the sound? The one that screams there's something definitely behind you? I froze, not sure of what to do next. Should I run? Should I turn around and book it back to my friend's house? I didn't know the best options in this situation. I whispered, "Hello?" Hearing my voice crack as the words fell from my lips. I don't even know why I opened my mouth, but it was out there, so I listened for any reply. My heart sank when the answer came back in the sound of my voice. "Hello?" I started to breathe too fast, my heart pounding against my chest. I felt like I might faint. "Hello?" My voice came again, but not from my mouth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the floor. I couldn't scream. I couldn't reply, as my voice echoed over and over from a short distance away. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. It sounded like it was everywhere around me. "Hello? Hello? Hello?" It repeated. "Stop it!" I finally managed to tear from my lips. Everything went silent. For a long minute, nothing happened. The air grew stale, and I realized for the first time that there were no typical forest sounds. There were no bugs, no frogs or crickets, nothing. I stood there terrified, waiting to see what would happen next. "Stop it!" it mimicked back. I'd had enough and was willing my heavy legs to move. Before I could take a step, though, I heard rustling in the bushes 20 feet to my left. I watched in horror as a deer head with 2 huge antlers protruded through the brush. As it came further out and stood up on 2s, I just took off. I flew out of the woods and all the way home in record time. I said nothing to my mom when I got there. I just went up to my room, lay down, and thought about what had happened. My mother came in at some point and asked me if everything was all right. I replied that yes, I was just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. I guess I might have been afraid of how she would react. I called my friend and told him everything. He freaked out and said that no matter what happened that night, to not reply or look out my window. This terrified me even more. He said to call him the next morning and he would explain more, and that he had to speak to his grandfather as soon as possible. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I stayed awake listening to every little sound the night brought. Around 3 a.m., just as I was about to drift off, the air changed. The night sounded quieted. I felt my heart begin to bound. I laid there and waited, pulling the covers up over my head like a child, far too scared to move. It came out after a long moment. "Hello?" I cried. It was all I could do. "Hello? Stop it!" It mocked what I had said in the woods again. It was terrifying enough when it copied what I said, but then it did something new. It called my name. "Amy," my mother's voice. "Amy, Amy, come here." "Hello? Stop it!" My voice again. For the rest of the night, the creature outside my window called my name in my mother's voice and repeated what I had said in the woods over and over. In the morning, when the sun had broken through the dark, it had finally stopped. I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke around 12 to my friend calling me to tell me he had spoken to his grandfather and could explain what happened to me. He said that there was a creature they called Yi Naldoshi, he who walks on all fours, or a skinwalker. He explained that it was an evil witch that used dark magic to transform into an animal with the attributes it required, and that it had caught my scent and knew me now. I was also given a warning that since it knew me, it would always follow me, that I would always have to be careful. Last night I heard scratching in my window, and then a low hum. The creature began saying my name again, but also adding in things I hadn't said in my mother's voice. At one point it started calling out my name, but drawing out really far, like, "Amy." It tried to get me to come outside, or to open the door and let it in my house. This went on all night. At this point I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Is it seriously going to stalk the shadows around me for the rest of my life? I don't think I can take that. Number 3. To start this story off and give a little insight about me, I am an 18-year-old female who grew up in Michigan and have lived in this country for as long as I can remember. For heads up, this is a long story, so bear with me. Now back to the story. On one particular hot summer weekend, me and a couple of friends, including my boyfriend, let's call him Tony, and my older brother, let's call him Brad, decided we were going to go camping for the weekend since it was such a nice warm week. Tony's parents had owned a cabin way out in Ludington, surrounded by a huge wooded area with a personal lake and no neighbors for at least 4 miles. But being stupid teenagers, we didn't really think about all that. All we were ready for was to party like any normal teens would. Well, after being there for 2 hours, our fun had started. Tony's friends had brought tons of alcohol and weed for us to last for the weekend, so we wouldn't be bored since we had no service and only movies to watch. After it got around 12 a.m. and was pitch black, we had a huge bonfire going. It was a total of 6 people, including me and Tony. As we talked and laughed about upcoming events in our lives, we were so distracted that we didn't notice that my brother had literally frozen his eyes onto one section of the woods. Mind you, we were all intoxicated and high at that time. Eventually, our talking ceased when Tony realized his friend and my brother had an emotionless expression. "Hey dude, you alright?" he asked Brad. Silence. Brad didn't reply or even make any movements that would indicate he had heard him. After that, I started to get scared as well as the other 2 girls there. It took a lot for my brother to act that way. Eventually, I was first to catch on that he was excessively staring into a certain spot in the woods. I turned my head and followed his gaze the best I could. When I finally caught on to what he was staring at, my heart dropped. There, right fucking there, was, at first look, a dog. At least that's what I thought. It was some person's dog that wandered off. But then my brain kicked in and I realized there weren't neighbors for miles. So how could there be a dog? My mind started to race while Tony still tried to get Brad to speak or even move. In one motion, this thing stood up tall. And when I say tall, I mean fucking gigantic. It had to be at least 6 feet tall. Everyone's seen it then. How could you not? The other 2 girls and the other boy with us gasped as they finally grasped why my brother was as still as a brick. No one moved for what seemed like hours. Tony was the first to talk. "No tail," he mumbled. No one heard what he said but Brad. And I swear to you when I say his eyes widened as big as pan saucers. That freaked me out immediately. "What did you say?" one of the girls asked. "It has no fucking tail," he hissed at her. My heartbeat stopped. He was right. There was no tail on this thing. Suddenly, my alcohol-clouded mind cleared up in a fraction of a second when I finally realized what this thing was. Now I understood why my brother was basically shitting his pants. This thing was a skinwalker. My instincts kicked in right there, but before I could nope the fuck out of there, this thing let out a terrible stench like rotting meat before screaming inhuman-like. The sound was enough to scare the fuck out of everyone. My brother was the first up out of his chair and started shouting native words to the creature, so I told everyone to get the fuck inside. No one questioned me when they seen just how dead serious I was, especially Tony. He'd never seen me so scared, so I knew it was a bad situation. We all hightailed it into the cabin with my brother in tow, still shouting native words at the creature, which seemed to keep it at bay, which gave us enough time to get inside. He slammed and locked the door before turning all the lights off and grabbing a special ash from the kitchen counter and started throwing it at every window and door while chanting. Of course, he and everyone freaked out and basically were in tears at this moment. After he was done, no one said a word for a long time. All of us were still in shock. He grabbed our dad's pistol and had it posted by him for hours. Everyone was entirely too shaken up to even question what happened. I must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up to my brother packing all our stuff into the 2 cars early in the morning. I understood why. We had native family. We knew what we were dealing with, and we knew that it would come back, and maybe not alone. Before we left, I did the blessing on the cabin and spoke a few calming words to the still very freaked out girls. We left as soon as everything was packed up. To this day, we still haven't explained exactly to our friends what happened that night, and they never bothered to ask us either.